There was a time last year when I was paying almost $1,000 a month on AI tools. And a lot of these tools I was not even using. Now, when I thought about that experience, I realized that I wasn't making any money with these AI tools. They were just a big liability on our monthly budget. Now, if you're a solopreneur, maybe a business leader, a coach, a bookkeeper, you're probably like me. You see these YouTube videos on how AI can automate the boring part of your day-to-day. You're thinking about how you can add value to your organization, to your clients, and you see these videos promising that it can take the manual work so that you can free up time to focus on your client, you can focus on your teams. The promises of these tools are not incorrect. Actually, a lot of these tools are great. The problem is not the tool. The problem is that we're not asking the right questions before we say yes to subscribing to a new tool. Instead of these tools becoming an asset to you, it becomes a liability. Instead of these tools actually freeing up more time for you and making your process more efficient, it actually duplicates your work. It actually complicates your process even more. So in today's talk, I want us to focus on one question, because the problem is not the tool. The problem is that we're not asking the right questions. By answering this one question, we can have the assurance that the tool that we're saying yes to will actually be an asset to us, that will be a value add to us and create more margin, create more revenue for ourselves, for our clients, versus this tool becoming a liability, versus this tool becoming an unknown liability. Today, we're going to go through 3 checkpoints that I use for my clients, for myself, to answer this one question. And I'm going to talk to you about a real example where I actually applied this framework where I was confidently walked away from $1,000 project for this client. And if you stay in the end, I'm going to share with you my 4 connectors that I use in my day-to-day to create margin for myself, so that at the end of the day, I can confidently turn off my laptop, unplug, and be present with my family and still not be afraid of dropping the balls for the clients that I get to serve. So the question that I want us to focus on today is this: does it make sense to automate blank? So stop for a moment and actually comment below, what is that blank that you wish to automate? And we're going to go through these 3 checkpoints so that we can confidently say whether this is a good automation or this is a bad automation for us. Before we dive into these 3 checkpoints, I just want to share with you my story, how I got started into AI. So back in May 2025, I had my performance review and I was speaking with my manager about AI. Just like you, I saw a YouTube video how this one person gave a prompt to an AI and it created this beautiful website. And then I went into this rabbit hole of watching more videos, how these certain individuals who were not technical were using AI to create new companies, to create extra few $1,000s a month for them. And I was really inspired by that. I'm here to tell you that those stories are actually true, but at the same time, those stories are not easy. I got into vibe coding. I attended this boot camp and had a great experience. I was able to ship my first product within 2 weeks. And I was working with Bolt.new, I was working with Replit, and my experience was amazing because I'm not a coder and my background is in internal audit. So it was really cool how I could just talk to the AI and give it my prompt, give it what I was thinking about, and it would just create these apps for me. And I remember when I presented that to my team, they were just so amazed by the potential, by what was created during the time. And then I got into automation about a month or 2 later. So I got into Make.com, I got into N8N, and I got into Zapier. I was frustrated with that experience because I was trying to take the experience that I had where I would just speak to AI and it would create something automated for me. It was not like that with this no-code, low-code tool. So it was getting frustrated. I remember Zapier a few months later came out with the Agent Builder, where you can just vibe code your workflow. I paid the extra $50 per month. I remember created this agent for me where it will monitor my Gmail. But the problem was that not even a month in, I was running out of credits already. It was getting too expensive. So I was frustrated. And what I realized looking back is that it was not Zapier's fault. It was not the tool's fault. But the issue was that I didn't have a clear job description for the tool. I did not answer the question, does this make sense automating? Now, if you're like me, you're probably in the same boat right now. You're seeing all these potentials that AI can bring into your business, to your organization, and you try it. And the problem with AI is that it makes things easier. Now, just because something is easy does not mean that it solves the problem. Easy, a lot of times, can actually mask the inefficiencies that you have. So today, I want us to answer this question: does it make sense to automate blank? Now, comment in the description below, what is that blank that you wish to automate? And now we're going to go through the 3 checkpoints to properly answer this one question. And the first checkpoint that we want to unpack is, what is the pain that I'm trying to solve? Not the shiniest tools, not the latest tools, because here's the thing about these tools. These tools are great, but I believe that there's no one tool that solves everything. Now, for me, I use Claude, and Claude is great. For me, I think that it brings the most return on investment for what I'm paying for. But even though Claude is good, and even though Claude has evolved and matured over time, it doesn't solve all my problems. Now, I'll give you an example. A few weeks ago, when I started this recording, there was a lot of updates that came out from Anthropic. There was Claude Cowork, there was Dispatch, there was all these great things that Claude was releasing. When these tools came out, I was watching a lot of these YouTube videos, and the feeling that I was getting was the fear of missing out. Probably some of you who are watching this, you've seen these videos from Claude, you've seen these videos from Higgsfield, and you're sitting there and you feel that you're missing out on the latest and greatest that can solve the problems that you have. For me, for example, Claude Cowork doesn't work for me because a lot of my stuff are actually on the cloud. So Cowork works best for stuff that you have on your computer, because how my workspace is set up, a lot of my key documents are actually on the cloud. Now, I use Cowork to do other stuff. I use Cowork to optimize my hard drive, to optimize my computer and things like that. But the stuff that I see out there, how they're using Cowork, for me, it just doesn't really apply to me, at least in this season of my day-to-day. Now, I tried to do that, and I'll be honest with you, when I did see that, I was feeling overwhelmed. I was feeling this fear of missing out. So the first question that I want you to ask before saying yes to a new tool is, what is the pain point that you're trying to solve? Because maybe Claude can solve that, maybe Zapier can solve that. But before you say yes to a tool, identify that pain point. Now, the second checkpoint that I want us to unpack is do a cost-benefit analysis. Once you start having all your pain points, identify them in priority of the most important. So here's the thing, automating something can actually cost more than actually not automating at all. I've been in this space for some time now, and I've had a lot of discussions, and a lot of the folks who are just watching about AI and actually not playing with it, actually not putting it in their day-to-day process, we think that AI is just going to solve everything. The problem in that thought process is that actually saying yes to a tool can actually cause more inefficiencies and can actually cause dissatisfaction with yourself, with your users. I was overseas in the spring. I was invited for a system implementation review. And what I saw there and what I'm seeing in other companies is that you try to say yes to these AI solutions without actually going through and identifying what is the pain point and doing a cost-benefit analysis. How much will it cost to actually put this solution? And what are the benefits? What is the payoff period before we can realize a return on our investment? Without going through those simple checkpoints, you start building and building. And again, AI makes it easy, but easy does not mean that you're solving the problem, but it can actually cause more inefficiencies. And I've seen companies and they're just putting thousands of hours, thousands of dollars, and they want to implement these solutions, and it's actually creating more work for their organization and creating user dissatisfaction for their end users. So again, first checkpoint is to identify the pain. And the second one is, once you identified all your pain, do a cost-benefit analysis. Prioritize what makes sense to automate and eliminate the ones that don't make sense to automate. The last checkpoint that I want us to dive into for today's episode is to time box your experience. So as you're going through these checkpoints, as you're answering the question, does it make sense to automate? You've identified your pain point. You've done your cost-benefit analysis. When you've identified this is the one that will go into proof of concept, time box, how long are you going to try this experiment? For me, for example, when I'm implementing a solution for a client, we do a minimal viable product. We do a proof of concept for about a week or two. And then the next step that I do with them is to do a parallel testing. They still run their old system with the new AI system for a good period of time. And I think a good period is 30 days. That way you can actually test it out and see what's working and what's not, get feedback to the AI system, get feedback to your developer to see what can be improved. And then after 30 days, you can decide, do we continue investing in this? Do we implement this, or do we kill it? Going back to the example from what I've seen with other companies is that they just want to implement something. They want to do a global rollout of a solution without actually doing a parallel test or time boxing to see, let's test this out. Let's launch a minimal viable product, a proof of concept, test it out for 30 days. And at the end, determine, do we continue investing or do we continue killing it? You know, I was inspired by this cybersecurity company that I saw on LinkedIn. They were talking about how they've invested a year building this product. And then when Claude Code came out, they decided that we're going to scrap this product that we've been working on for a year and rebuild it from the ground up. And because they made that courageous decision, they time boxed their experiment. Their product, from the last time I checked, is actually doing significantly better. So again, the question that I want you to ask today before you automate something is, does it make sense to automate blank? And the 3 checkpoints that we went through today is, number 1, identify the pain point, not the tool, the pain point. Number 2 is do a cost benefit analysis, identify in order of priorities, what makes sense to automate, how much it will cost, what will be the benefit, and what will be the risk of actually automating it and the risk of not automating it. And number 3, when you identified the solution that you want to try out, do a proof of concept, do a minimum viable product, and time box your experiment. 30 days, maybe 2 weeks, but I think 30 days is a good number. I shared with you earlier, I want to give you an example of how this applies in my own personal experience. Now, we have a client where we created an automation for them that automates the transcribing of the invoice details into their database. So when an invoice comes, whether it's a PDF or a scanned copy, the AI using Claude Vision will actually take the details of that invoice and transcribe it into their database. So we tested it out. They're very happy with the solution, and it's saving them a lot of time and also reducing manual errors of someone actually opening the PDF, doing manual data entry. But instead, they moved from doing data entry to doing a supervisory review. So the person that used to do data entry now will just open the PDF and compare it with the data in the database. And it's more accurate that way. If there's any errors from the system, because again, AI is non-deterministic, so it could have error. That's why I tell my clients to have the human in the loop. Now they can make the adjustments and make the approvals and so on. Now they wanted to automate attaching the PDF, the W-9 into this. When I scoped that project, it's about $1,000. But when I was going through it, I advised against automating that process. So I went through the framework. Does it make sense to automate it? And I went through the 3 checkpoints. What was the pain point? The pain point was that they didn't want to search their Google Drive for the W-9 and for the AI to just automatically attach it. That was the pain point. And number 2 was the cost benefit analysis. Now, the cost is $1,000, and the benefit, when I was doing the return on investment, how much time it will save them versus the cost of me doing that, it will save them some time, but not so much because of the volume of transactions that they have. And also qualitatively, I was thinking that by removing that one step of the process, it could actually lower the effectiveness of their human in the loop control. So I advised against it. Now, number 3, the checkpoint of time boxing it, because we didn't implement it, we ended up not doing it. So it saved them $1,000 and also saved them the time of actually testing this out. Now, at the end of the day, they're the expert of their business process. So they can come back to me and say, you know what, we really want this. And that's something that we can negotiate. And that's something that we need to define and really get into agreement before we do a proof of concept, before we actually start building. But that's an example of answering that question of, does it make sense to automate this, and going through the 3 checkpoints. Now, the last promise that I shared with you was that I was going to give you my 4 connectors that I use in my day-to-day to manage my daily operations. But not only that, so that at the end of the day, I can confidently shut down my laptop, unplug from my computer, unplug from the AI game, and be present with my family. But at the same time, come back, refresh the following day, and also still be on top of things. All right. So the 4 connectors that I use for my day-to-day, number one, Otter.ai. So I use Claude.ai. I talked about Cowork earlier. I don't use Cowork personally because it doesn't fit my workspace, but Claude.ai is my virtual assistant that I use that have access to the different parts of how I organize my life. So the first connector that I use is Otter.ai. So for me, I record all my meetings with my clients and I just tell them that, hey, I'm going to be recording the meetings and you get a copy of what we talked about so you can refer back to it. And also the reason I record my meeting is so that I can be present with my clients and I can just listen to what they want to talk about, what their processes are, their pain points, and I can be present with them. Now, once the meeting is done, in Claude.ai, I have a skill that takes the raw transcript from Otter and summarizes that for my preference. Now, Otter.ai has its own but for myself, I'd like my meeting notes summarized in a certain way. So at a high level, my meetings, it has an executive summary, it has risks and opportunities, and also it has a to-do list of our action items based on the meeting. And also the skill that I have in Claude also identifies potential action items that we didn't explicitly say in the meeting. When Claude.ai is done presenting those notes to me, I look at that and identify which ones are approved, our actual action items, which ones are the ones that would actually be eliminated. And once that approved, the second connector that I have is Asana. So Asana is our ticketing system. And right now I'm just using a free version of Asana. It's working out well for me. I might actually check out the paid plans to see if it has additional features. But for now, everything goes into Asana. Now, what I love about Asana is that it centralizes all my action items. And that's why I'm able to close my laptop because tomorrow I can just run another skill that I have in Claude called Daily Debrief that shows, what are the top priorities for the day? What are the top priorities for the week? And the third connector that I use is Notion. So Notion is like my wiki page. A year ago when I started working with Notion connectors, it was clunky, but now it's actually doing really well. One of the things I love about Notion is that I have different databases for the different parts of my life. For example, I use Notion to create my SOP. So when I'm learning about frameworks that works for myself, I would pass that to Notion and I can query Notion to ask, hey, what is that thing about the question that we should ask when saying yes to an automation or when we're deciding on automation? Also, I have in my Notion database, I use it for my daily devotional. So when I'm reading my Bible, I'm having my quiet time, I have a project in Claude.ai that connects to my Notion of the Bible reading that I'm doing, what God is speaking to me, and I put that there. And I can go back and ask for the past 7 days, what is it that God has been speaking to me? I also use Notion for my workouts. I can track my macros and things like that. And the last connector that I use is my Gmail. So what I love about that, again, like I use Claude AI as my virtual assistant. I can say, hey, what is this email about this client? Or what is this email about this rental property? And it can go in and do that. I can say, hey, scrub all the emails from XYZ, and it can create that for me. So those are the 4 connectors that I use to manage my daily operations. And like I said, having these connectors, they're not complicated. I'm not programming anything. I'm just connecting something that's already available through Claude.ai. By using these connectors, it allows me to create margin for myself. It allows me to be able to shut down at the end of the day, be present with my wife, be present with the kids, and also come back refreshed and also come back on top of things so that I can serve my clients much better. As we close, if you're sitting there with a stack of tools and you're overwhelmed, you're wondering, man, what am I going to do with these tools? That's normal. And that's why in my channel, I want to be transparent as I can for what I'm learning and also give you some tools and framework to help you be efficient and effective with these AI tools. I really believe in these AI tools. Claude, the connectors that I talked about, Otter.ai, Notion, Asana, all these tools, they've been a game changer for me. But it's not about collecting these tools. It's not about just saying yes to every subscription. Yes, try it, but apply those frameworks. But it's about identifying the tools that make sense for you. It's good to be inspired by videos like this to learn from our experiences. But at the end of the day, identify what works best for you. Here's your action item this week. It's not to sign up for Claude, but to actually sit down and identify what is the pain point that you're trying to solve. Now, the next step after that is go through the tools tech stack and see Does the tool that I have solve the problem that I'm trying to solve? Hey friends, thank you so much for joining me in this talk. I really enjoy working with solopreneurs and business owners gain more AI fluency so that you can be confident that when you say yes to these AI tools, that it will be an asset to you versus a liability. Do me a favor and drop in the comment below, what is the biggest pain point that you have right now that you wish you can automate? Now, if you enjoy this episode, I want to invite you to hit subscribe so that you can get the latest episode. My goal is to have this conversation with you every week. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.